Welcome back. So far in this series, we've covered issues as diverse as communication, internal quality and self-development. We're now going to look at cost control and maximising profit. With the next discussion, I started by asking Rosalind Payne for her view, because of her experience in growing a small to medium-sized recruitment business. It's quite interesting to watch out for her views on weekly cost control. Let's rejoin the panel. How do you keep your costs under control?
Well, I think as we grew, it had to come more in-house, and what we learnt very quickly is that as you wanted, again, the independence, and we have a very open book culture in our company, which is very good because it creates very commercially aware people in the branches, but at the same time you were then giving them a sort of ability for stationery, things like that, that a lot of people would not keep control of at all. You need to bring that in-house, and you need somebody within the company which is very difficult in smaller companies, to be very tight on cost control and to be watching it on a weekly basis.
Why do you say it's more difficult in smaller companies?
Well, because the people are at the coalface, they're working on a daily basis on a desk, and they're bringing in the money. So that actually looking at the costs and what people are spending money on, often you can say, yes, you can have it, and off they go and spend it, and you just don't realise how much it's accumulating and what really is needed. And you really have to keep a very tight control, and you can save a huge amount of money. Everybody's trying to look at margins and percentages, but if you really get your cost control right, you can be making a lot more profit.
Sash?
If one's looking at profit, one's got to look at the returns on investment. Sometimes profit could be cash profit, sometimes it could be organisational innovation, it could be market impact as a profit. I guess in a way you've got to look for quick wins. So if you're a small company, how do you identify quick wins so that you can focus on those quick wins? Are those quick wins going to give you the margins that you need?
Business plans are the cornerstone for maximising profit and keeping costs under control. And you can make much higher profits simply by focusing more closely on cost control. I particularly wanted to cover cost control because I believe it's commonly overlooked. And I think all leaders should build a culture of cost control into their organisation. For ourselves, my own company, we're a very successful organisation, but even we focus on reusing paper. Let's now rejoin the discussion by looking at additional ways in which leaders can reduce cost. Should we be quite ruthless in terms of cost? For example, with staff being a large part of the cost of our business, how quickly should we make a decision to terminate? Charles?
We don't want to have a hire and fire culture in our industry. Hopefully if you've recruited the right person, they'll make an impact. If after 6 months they're not making an impact, you've tried to support them, you've tried to bring them on, and they're still not responding, then clearly it's kinder for them to let them go because it's not the career for them. But if you've got a proven biller of 3 to 4 years who hits a slump for whatever reason, it does come down to that issue of good management. You just don't become a poor biller overnight. You've got to get to the bottom of the issues and help that person address those issues, because otherwise you'll be losing a hugely valuable member of your team for a 3-month dip in performance.
I disagree strongly that you don't want a hire and fire culture. That's exactly what you want. I mean, you don't call it that, and it has very negative connotations, but good management and good leadership is about hiring the right people and firing the right people. And whether it's replacing poorer performers with better performers and gradually pushing up the productivity levels, it's not a difficult business to make money out of. It's not a difficult business to make a lot of money out of. The thing we haven't mentioned enough is cash. And the answer is very simple. You design a business model and you budget it that works. You know it's going to work. So you look at it on paper, this actually works. That's just part of your plan, obviously. Then you focus on cash first, secondly on profit, and then thirdly on revenues. Costs fall out of that budget, and you have to be very strict. Cost control, you do have to be ruthless. You don't have to be ruthless with people, and Charles is quite right. You've got a good performer who isn't performing. That's not a cost issue. That's a management and motivation issue, or a training issue, or a development issue. That's nothing to do with cost, and it's going to cost you a hell of a lot more to fire them than it is to turn them round. So, but you do need, as a business, to be thinking about hiring the best people and firing the worst people. It's a constant process. You can't have a happy family forever and ever, otherwise the business will stay the same and just stagnate.
I think also the fact that you've got to move the people that aren't moving with the business.
Yes.
The businesses are moving
Exactly.
so fast, and people will get to a point where they can't move or don't want to move any further.
Precisely.
And I think it comes back to what we were saying about the culture and the strategy. And if you buy everybody into the strategy, the people become aware themselves that the majority of people want to move forward with a certain strategy. And those people that don't, then obviously feel uncomfortable. They don't want to move forward. They want to stay in a more cosy zone. And you'll often find that you might not have to get rid of them. They will actually, wander off themselves. They will look elsewhere because they don't feel comfortable in that
company's
culture.
changed.
That's it.
I think it's also worth pointing out recruitment consultancies have very high gross margins, and in that context it's very easy to have a spending culture, to develop a spending culture, and it seems like it's just a very sensible discipline to look at your overheads regularly, even in good times, and just say what is a non-productive overhead that we can eliminate.
So does that come back
you're
to
throwing away margin?
Does that come back to the business plan again, a regular monthly review?
Yeah. Yeah,
Against your budget.
but yeah.
Counts against your budget. You should also have a forecast. So an out of budget should come a forecast, so that you're actually working to a forecast, so you have a reasonable idea. And if it says you're going to spend £20,000 on X and you spend £21,000 on X, you need a variance analysis. Somebody needs to tell you why. And if there's a problem, you deal with the problem there and then. You can't keep letting it happen.
So the cost savings will fall out of that process. Charles, what about outsourcing? How can that save the business money?
Well, I mean, I think the main role of recruitment companies is winning and servicing business, and I think you have to be ruthless. You have to be ruthless in looking at your costs and processes, and if you can, they're not your core competencies in many ways, and if you can actually find a company whose core competencies they are, who can do it more cost effectively than you can, then you should outsource those functions to that company. I mean, it is ridiculous. You see a 3-man recruitment business employing 2 back office personnel who are not revenue earning, but they're actually cost bases, and that is no way to run a profitable business.
And are recruitment directors of smaller companies frightened of that? Are they concerned that they're giving away some control in terms of outsourcing? Alex, what are your thoughts on that?
I think sometimes they're nervous in terms of chasing payments. Because if it's their bottom line and their business is dependent on the money coming in on a regular basis, I think sometimes they're nervous about having someone else chasing it because they feel that they're better doing themselves. But you can try things, and if they don't work out, you can move on and try someone else. So there are solutions to that.
What exactly should owners and directors of recruitment businesses think about outsourcing? Richard?
I think it's a very good idea. Anything that is non-core or non-productive in terms of revenue generation, one should consider outsourcing. It can be outsourced with service level agreements, which can deal with the quality issues. You make it someone else's problem, and you make your payments very much linked to the level of commercial activity taking place in your business, as opposed to a large unproductive overhead that's there whether you're doing good business or bad business. It's not core, get rid of it.
To be devil's advocate, wouldn't some people in that position, perhaps in a smaller business, be thinking, well, I'm giving away chunks of my profit here, I can't afford that?
It's very easy to justify the case for outsourcing. I mean, outsourcing finance department and IT department, it's very easy. The company will come in and demonstrate to you how much it costs you at the moment and the difference that they're going to charge you, and the difference is the money extra profit you're going to make. So if it costs you more money, you probably shouldn't be outsourcing. You're probably not of the size or of the type of business to be doing it, but you should be able to save money on it. And you can outsource any infrastructure area, finance, marketing, IT, HR, can all be outsourced. And in most companies, I would strongly recommend it is, because it's a massive distraction.
Sesh, smaller companies, what can they do to save money?
They could perhaps maybe look at procurement, joint procurement, collaborating, I think is a word that we've heard before. If we think about perhaps maybe the service level agreements, how can we buy service level agreements together? So for example, if I was a new business starting up and I heard that there was another new business starting up, perhaps we're not competing, but from a supplier's perspective we could save money by clubbing together, as they would say.
I mean, what about organisations like Team, Rosalind? I mean, are there cost saving benefits of being working within organisations such as Team?
Oh yes, absolutely. I mean, totally legal, legal updates. You have a solicitor constantly on hand if you want. I know the REC do, but this is also another avenue. Also for purchasing, a lot of services will come and they join a team wanting to recommendations, and so we can all link in and get far more cost-effective services from there.
And would you have would you outsource the payroll via team? Does that work in that fashion?
Yes, you can do, certainly. I mean, there are organisations there that are recommended. So it's a recommendation as well, and you can actually talk to other owners who will say exactly what is happening. It's the same as Alex. We'll give references on these people and say how well it works on an immediate basis.
Charles, typically a company with 150 staff, what sort of mix do you think it would be in terms of salespeople versus back office and marketing and other administrative staff?
That's a difficult one to say because it depends how sophisticated the company is, but you must constantly be looking at your processes and saying, are we doing these in the most efficient way and the most cost-effective way? If you've got a company of 150 people, by all means keep it 150, but make sure 120 of those 150 are the revenue earners, not 60 of those 150.
That's exactly right. I mean, 4 to 1 is the perfect ratio for admin. Any less than that, and it's dangerous because you're underweight in infrastructure.
Anyone disagree with that 4 to 1 ratio? No. Costs can escalate unless you budget and perform monthly variance analysis. And you can save time and money by outsourcing non-core overheads. When looking at staffing levels, I recommend a 4 to 1 sales to support staff ratio, as having too many support staff can seriously eat into your profits. And it's constantly worth examining whether you should be replacing weaker staff with better performers. So I hope that discussion has given you some food for thought on how to save cost. The biggest cost saver for me is termination. And I completely agree with Graham Palfrey-Smith's view, hire the best people and fire the worst. And I believe that leaders who focus on constantly checking how the weakest 10% are performing and then considering what to do about that can save massively. Let's now rejoin the discussion. Let's now look at getting staff buy-in to hitting goals and targets. As a leader, how do we go about doing this? Alex?
I think, again, it depends on the size of the company. If you're a big company, you do it for your management. You make sure that they've bought into the targets that you would like them to hit, sitting down with them, explaining why they need to be hit, how it will help take the company and themselves forward. But if it's in a smaller business, the same message, but communicating it directly to the team. But I think the key thing is always to do it on an individual basis. If you're going to do it in a smaller environment, where you actually spend time with each person, talking about what their roles, what their activities are. They hit certain activities, then the money will actually come in, and they'll hit their financial targets as well. But it's actually taking that time to explain the process and getting them to buy in and to agree to those targets. Because if you enforce targets on people, then if they don't hit them, then they're like, well, you pushed them on me. But if their targets are maybe, they're challenging targets, and people will strive as long as they've bought into the processes.
So how do we achieve that buy-in, Richard?
I think it is the process of sitting down with the individual, discussing the marketplace, discussing what they can achieve, what they have achieved, what you're looking to them to achieve. The concept of the challenging or the stretch target, absolutely. Making sure it doesn't become demotivating. There's nothing worse than a target. If one target is missed, that's it, your year's ruined. There's got to be a recovery process. And finally, if it's not working, there has to be a process by which you exit the person. I think as long as that's done in a sensible, open and fair fashion and is adhered to rigorously, it works well.
Now, we talked about new ideas. In your experience, what's the best decision you've made in terms of a new idea for revenue streams? Rosalind?
I think for a new idea of revenue stream is taking somebody from outside the organisation when they came to me wanting to join one part, seeing lights on every time they talked about another area is actually taking that person and starting up a completely new division. I think that sometimes we're blinded by what we're actually doing, and I think we need to sit back and see what some talents people have and bring to your business, and it very much is that person's culture fit, their passion has got to fit in every other way, and then you can start a new stream.
So it's recognising in that individual that they wanted to do something else and then letting them run with it.
Absolutely.
Okay. Charles?
Well, I'm going to be very short and selfish on this. Best revenue stream idea I ever had was setting up my own business.
Why do you say that? I mean, in terms of, you've been involved in the running of a very large corporation.
Because I think it takes all sorts. I think around this table you have, by instinct, risk takers. We've all taken the risks to set up our own business and run with that. But there are many people who don't want to do that, who can be hugely successful within an established business and hugely innovative with an established business, but they need that discipline and that framework and infrastructure around them. So really it's sort of horses for courses.
Okay. Sesh, revenue streams, best idea?
Yeah, I think specifically in the recruitment world, one of the things that sticks in my mind is a few years ago I was business developing and I had to open up new branches for the organisation I was working with. And the tactical approach I took was to understand my local marketplace. And having done so, it was in West London, and we soon realised that it was very heavy with electronics. A lot of electronics companies around 10 miles of West London. And the best decision I ever made was investing £150 in soldering irons and actually sending one of my top temps on a training course to understand how to solder. And it won me 3 major contracts. And that was the best decision I ever made. I had space in the office, it attracted good candidates. I had clients coming to see me from all around the country saying, wow, this recruitment agency has done something different. And it was an assessment centre. And I think that's, for myself, probably the best decision I've ever made. It gave me the confidence to go out and do great other things.
It gave you a competitive edge?
It certainly did.
Yeah. Graham, any similar experiences?
A few. I mean, it's difficult picking the best one. I suppose it's the first one, isn't it? The first time you realise. I mean, in my case, it was choosing to specialise in commercial accounting, which really, when I went into financial recruitment 20-odd years ago, was virtually non-existent. I mean, commercial accountants were very rare, and banking accountants were non-existent. I mean, bankers were much better at numbers than accountants, as far as they were concerned. And everybody worked in practice, and I thought, well, it's got to change, and I did, and along with a lot of other people, Michael Page, Robert Walters, people like that. And it was fantastic. Jeff Grout, another example.
So it's spotting the gap early and then exploiting it.
And then going for it, and taking a company, when I went to Harris & Willis, where there were 100% of the revenues were practice and tax. Within 2 years, 99.5% of the revenues, and they were much bigger then, were all commercial. It changed that quickly, the market changed that quickly, so yeah, that was easily the best.
Yeah, interesting.
Well, I'm not telling you about the next best, because I haven't done it yet. So.
That's fine. What about marketing ideas? Best marketing idea for impact on the bottom line?
I think for me it's got to be referrals. You know, a lot of people spend a lot of money, and we don't outsource our media or anything else like that because we don't need to, because all we do is work the candidates that we've got.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're good candidates, they have good friends, they have good relations, and really, for the most cost-effective one, that's what you really need to be doing.
Absolutely. Any additional ones to add to that, Alex?
And the same with clients.
Yes.
You know, utilising them, they're very underutilised, the client referral. You know, just bring them up on a vacancy you've done recently. You know, do you like the service? What did you dislike about it? And then
even
pick
the same company, people don't do it, do they?
Absolutely, and then just saying, well, you know, who else do you network with, or you work with in your company, who could also utilise from that good service?
You know, in terms of that, it makes me think about leaders and how often they pick up the phone to one of their clients and ask the same question. But safe in the knowledge that at the end of that call they're going to get a referral which wins a major new contract. And it's 1 sales call a week maybe, or 5 sales calls a week. How many leaders do that, and should they be doing more of it?
They don't, I'm sure. Of large companies, no. I mean, you would be doing it probably when you met clients at rugby or golf or what have you. You actually have them and they can't escape. And that's when you do your networking and you're deep delving into the client. We're doing £200,000 a year with you. We want to be doing 2 million with you. How do we do that? Who should we be talking to? And that's where a good leader, a good chief exec will really demonstrate their worth.
Well, in terms of myself, I mean, when I first really bought into the idea of client referrals, it was instigated by a call I received from American Express. Out of the blue, they called me. It was a senior person within the business. So that impressed me, and said, we're calling to ask what you think of the service. What could we do differently? How happy are you with this? How could we improve? And here I am telling the story. Now, if more leaders were prepared to pick up the phone and talk to their clients, what a powerful message it sends to say, I'm the chief executive of this business, or I'm the director, or I'm the senior manager, and I want to find out how we can improve.
I care about it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, any final ones to add to ideas in terms of revenue streams?
Yeah, I think Local PR is very important. It's much neglected. I think every branch manager, even if they're part of a large chain, should focus on the public and local perception of their branch. Say you're based in Nottingham, there'll be loads of local newspapers. You should be constantly feeding stories into that about your initiatives. You should work with the Chambers of Commerce. Anywhere where there's people who are in a position to buy your services, you need to be involved with them, and don't be afraid of corporate entertaining in a small way. No matter how small a business you are, take someone on a golf day, take someone to the races, build up that feel-good factor, become part of your local business community, be seen as the solution.
How difficult is that? I mean, there's a perception before you get used to working PR is that it's actually quite difficult to get your name in the press. In reality, how easy or difficult is it?
It's very easy if you're saying something they want to print, and the easiest way to find that out is to ask them. You get through to somebody and say, what are you interested in writing about? And coincidentally, that's the very thing you're able to write about. It's extraordinary, that.
Yes.
And it works every time.
Make sure your stories are topical. For example, in the summer you've got a press release about students. In the winter you're talking about the Christmas rush. In Easter you're talking about the spring sales. I mean, make it relevant to the season, the period and the story, and it will get printed. I mean, local newspapers, particularly daily local newspapers, have to fill a lot of column inches. If you've got something topical and relevant and exciting to say about your local community, actually it doesn't even need to be that exciting, you'll get it in. Yeah.
There's one other thing that I think one can do, which is always look to a larger and more aggressive market for lessons. So whether it is looking overseas and saying, what are they doing in the States, what ideas have caught on, could I be the first one to introduce that into my local market, or whether if you're in a market town and you're saying, what are they doing in the local city that is capturing imagination, you can probably obtain 1 or 2 quick wins that will enable you to capture a slice of a new market or an emerging market simply on the back of a trend that you're first with because you've observed someone else making something of that market.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with regard to PR and the sort of perceived difficulty of obtaining PR, the surprising thing once you start to do it is that it actually necessitates a good salesperson, as Graham was illustrating. That you call the journalist and find out what they need and provide a solution to the need. And we are all salespeople, so we can dramatically increase our brand awareness via positive PR. And as you pointed out, Charles, it's very easy to achieve.
It's getting involved with local charities. It really is becoming. It's about your community, and community, particularly to recruiters, is so important. And if you hit your community hard enough, you will win business. You really will. If you leave no stone unturned, you will win business and you will be a success.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The other thing the media like, I mean, they like statistics. So if you've done a survey, they absolutely love that. And also if you're picking up other information which you can get from the REC and things like that, and influence it that way. Also, they love pictures. So, and it doesn't have to be a photographer. Having a PR company for a year recently, I mean, I was out there taking pictures far better than half the photographers they hired. They turned up late. I wouldn't, as long as somebody's got a decent camera and they can do that, they can get far more spontaneous ones.
Videos as well, of course.
Yeah.
It's also about building a relationship. It's one of the key things I think with journalists is just to be there. If they call through looking for a response to something, make the time. It's so important and it's so powerful, and the successes from it are great.
The journalist rang me and I couldn't speak to him.
Yeah.
I was on a train and I was going to get cut off.
But if
Has he called back?
but if you can,
always find somebody else that can do. There's always somebody if you can't to do so.
It's like building a relationship. If you don't give them that time back, then they will go to someone else.
Well, I think it's a very important part of building the brand, isn't it? Because of course, once you get a few press clippings, then you have a press clippings folder in reception.
Yeah.
And if you're good at it, it's free, and people believe editorial. People don't believe ads, they believe editorial. If you can get editorial and you're good at it, and you take time to become good in it, you will get free publicity.
Plus, journalists are lazy. Once they know you're good for a comment, good for a story, they'll phone you up because
makes the job easier.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And again, that repositions yourself as a leader, both externally and within your business. So I think we've all agreed PR is a way to go. When setting targets, it's important to be realistic, because unrealistic targets cause nothing but trouble. But remember, flexibility is vital, as you need to be in a position to spot gaps in the market and exploit them. PR can be easy to secure if you remember the following key points. Treat PR as selling, because that's what it really is. Always take calls from journalists, because if you do, they'll come back for more. Most importantly of all, remember that PR can be free, and if done well, it can have a much more powerful effect than advertising. So some very interesting tips within that discussion, particularly with regard to PR. If you treat it as selling, you'll find that you'll get extensive coverage in the press very quickly. Now you may be interested to know that since this series was filmed, I've expanded Alex's idea with regard to client service checks at a series of innovation seminars. And my suggestion to directors is to set up teams focusing on client service checks and set them targets. Perhaps set your managers a target of calling 10 clients a week and really asking how you could improve, what you could do better as a business. And then quite naturally, if the feedback is good, focusing on a referral into a new organisation. I believe by doing this, you'll mushroom the new business winning very, very quickly indeed. Well, thank you very much indeed for joining me today. It's been a most interesting discussion. If you had to have one message for the watching audience, what would it be, Alex?
I think as a leader, you've got to have a clear vision. You've got to know what your vision is, yourself and for your company, then to honestly communicate that to everyone within it so they understand that message and everyone's pulling together.
Sesh?
I say the message is to make sure that you've got a good team around you and you build that team as you go along with your business plans.
Charles?
Never lose your hunger for knowledge and never underestimate yourself, because plenty of other people will do that for you, so there's no point wasting any energy on that.
Graham?
Have a plan, set out to learn, earn and have fun.
Rosalind?
Yes, I think very much knowledge, learning all the time, but really taking the time out to do it. Really spend the time to do that, however little or as much during the course of the week.
Richard?
Measure what you value, value what you measure.
We've now reached the end of my leadership development programme. I really hope it's given you some serious food for thought. We've covered some fascinating subjects: communication, branding, strategy and self-development. But if there's one additional thing I'd like you to take away from this series, it's the hope that you'll use it not just for directors, but also for managers. Businesses that have strong leaders in place at all levels of the organisation will undoubtedly be more successful. And directors who train their managers to understand how to run a business as opposed to just running a team can reap massive rewards. Now, for the very first time, there's a product that allows you to do exactly that. And used well, this leadership development programme could enable you to move streets ahead of your competitors.